Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Holy Smokes Barbecue channel. Today on the channel, we are smoking a pork butt, and we're gonna do this in about as simple a way as possible. And that's because, I've had a lot of people that have reached out in the comment section or just kind of online and have asked some very basic questions about pork butts. And so today, as we make this pork butt, I'm gonna give you some very basic beginner tips on how to make your first pork butt on a pit boss be some of the best you've ever had. And so with that, let's get started on our pork butt. All right, for tip number one, we're gonna call this tip, know what you're buying. So if you're in a butcher shop, you're in a grocery store and you see pork butt and you see pork shoulder, believe it or not, those are two different things. They come from the same area of the animal, which is actually the shoulder. And to make it even more confusing, pork butt is usually found a little bit higher up on the shoulder. Pork shoulder is found a little bit lower down. What's the difference? Pork butt is what we have here. It's gonna have all this delicious marbling in there. Pork shoulder is gonna have a little bit harder fat on it. It's gonna have a pretty deep fat cap. Pork butt is gonna be your choice for pulled pork. Pork shoulder is gonna be your choice for like crackling, crispy, like pork rinds and things like that. But like I said, today we've got a pork butt. Tip number two is about trimming. Now with any piece of meat, the tendency is gonna be to trim it so that there's basically no fat left on it. You do not wanna do that to a pork butt because that fat is going to melt and make this the juiciest pork you've ever had. So you wanna make sure that you don't over trim. Now that being said, if you have just hard pieces of fat in here or anything extra that's just kind of really deep, you can go ahead and take that out. For my purposes today, my butcher has already trimmed, and so there's nothing really that I need to do. Next is the binder. Now this piece of meat is kind of sticky when it's out of the packaging, but it's gonna dry out pretty quickly. So we wanna make sure that our seasoning choice sticks to this piece of meat nicely. So you've heard people talk about a binder. The purpose of the binder is to bind the seasoning to the meat. And today I'm using one of the most popular binders, which is yellow mustard. Now, if you don't like mustard, that does not matter. You're not gonna taste this at all. What else can you use? Worcestershire sauce. You could use like a spicy brown mustard if you're looking for that darker color. Honestly, you could just use water. But whatever you do, you definitely want to apply a binder to your pork butt before you season. And now you don't have to go crazy with it, just enough to cover it. And yes, I recommend using gloves. A, you're handling raw meat, and B, this would be very messy without. Okay, now you may be asking yourself, what about the underside? Well, the underside is what's called the fat cap. For this specific video today, I'm not gonna season that because I'm gonna smoke this right in this pan. So I'm not gonna put it directly on the grates, which different people have different feelings about, but this video today is all about ease and simplicity. All right, so now let's get this mustardy glove off. And let's move on to our next tip, which is seasoning. Now you can make this as simple or as complex as you want. And here's the thing about seasoning. With a piece of meat this big, this one's about 10 pounds, it's really difficult to over season it because this meat can take a lot of seasoning. This is why this is one of the easiest things to start with if you've never done anything on your smoker before. If you're trying to do like a piece of fish or maybe even some like chicken thighs or chicken breasts, those are things you want to pay attention to the amount of seasoning on, but with a pork butt, go to town. Now what should you use to season? Well, you could literally do salt and pepper, you could do salt, pepper, and garlic, or you could do some sort of a seasoning that you get somewhere. I particularly love the Pit Boss Memphis barbecue rub. This is a brown sugar based rub, which means that that sugar, once it encounters that heat for a long period of time, it's gonna caramelize and get this beautiful bark on this pork butt. Now when you season, I like to season up about, 6 inches from the surface, just so we get a nice even distribution. Now what's interesting is most of these seasonings are called rubs, but we don't actually want to rub it onto this pork butt because we don't want to mess up this beautiful kind of like how this looks. We also don't want it to be uneven as far as the flavor profile goes, so we just want to pat. So we're gonna pat, not rub. For the sides like this, it's really hard to get those from the same angle. So in that case, I like to just season my glove here and then just pat, like so. And then once I've done that, and I've patted all of the surface area, I actually like to come in one more time, because again, it's really hard to over-season a piece of meat this big. It's time for your next tip, and that is going to be the sweat. Okay, so before this goes on, while it looks like it's ready, a key component is to let it sit here for about 5 to 10 minutes at the minimum. You could let it sit for a half hour if you want, but what that's gonna do is it's gonna make this meat start to actually sweat. It's gonna bring some of that moisture out, and the seasoning's gonna seep in for an even more amazing flavor profile. So while that happens, we are pretty much done with it, so let's go over to the smoker and we'll talk about time and temp. Okay, so when it comes to pork butt, the name of the game is low and slow. Pork butt is a giant piece of meat. It does have a considerable amount of fat in it, and that fat takes time to render into those delicious juices that you know and love. So if you've never done a pork butt before, I recommend you do not go over 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Preferably keep it at 225 the whole way. But if you're strapped for time, you can do up to 275, and as long as you're paying attention to it and you got a smoker that'll keep an accurate temperature, you'll be fine. And believe it or not, that's what I'm doing today. Now, even though we use that mustard binder on there, since it's sitting in smoke for a very, very long time, it's going to dry out. It always happens. So you want to have at the ready something to spritz it with. Nice little spray bottle, which I have right here. You could just put water in one of these. You could put Worcestershire sauce. What I have here is a mixture of Worcestershire sauce and water, just kind of to dilute it a little bit. And I'm going to come out and check on it periodically. And as I see that it's drying out, we're going to spritz it to just keep it moist in there. Now, because we're making it in the foil pan, it's going to retain a lot of moisture. It's not going to drip through the grates or anything. That pan is going to catch a lot of that moisture, which is one of the reasons I like to do it in a pan, is because that way it just gives me that extra level of juiciness when we eventually pull it. So at 275 degrees, I expect this pork butt today to take probably about 10 hours. If I was doing lower at like 225, we might expect 15 to even 20 hours. Just depends. There's a lot of information out there on the internet about time and temp, but listen, don't let any of that trump your ability to go out and just look at it and get a look at how it's doing. With a pork butt, you're definitely going to want to use an internal meat thermometer, preferably one that you can just leave in as it cooks. That way you just come out, you look at your smoker, you see what the temperature is, you go back inside. You can use kind of a thermopin or whatever, like a portable thermometer, come out and temp check it occasionally. That does mean, however, you're piercing that meat several times, and that's just going to allow a lot of that juice to get out of there. So if you can, you want to use a method where your meat thermometers are in the entirety of the cook. As far as the wood type goes, with a pellet smoker like this, I love the Pit Boss Hickory blend. Hickory is not a super overwhelming smoke flavor, and for anything that's going to be on there, as long as this is, you don't want an overwhelming smoke flavor. I mean, you don't want to eat a campfire, right? You want to have that really nice smoke flavor. So Hickory is going to be a really great choice. All right, a lot of tips in there, I know, but now it's time to get this pork butt onto my Pit Boss Savannah Onyx Edition. And if you're wondering about wrapping it, we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. Right in the middle, just like that. All right, we'll go in with one of our meat thermometers. And on something like this, I actually like to use 2 thermometers just to get an accurate reading of the temperature kind of overall. There we go. Now I'll be out to check on this and to tell you a little bit about what temperatures we're going for, wrapping it, all that kind of stuff in just a little bit. But for now, let's just let it sit here and cook for a few hours. All right, it's been about 3 hours on this pork butt, and you can see from the control panel here on my Pit Boss that my 2 temperature probes are about 10 degrees different from one another. What that tells me is that one side of the inside here is going to be a little bit hotter than the other. So a very easy way to deal with that is just to rotate it in the pan. But first, let's see if we need to spritz. All right, so you can definitely see that we're drying out here. So it's definitely time to spritz, because again, we want to preserve that moisture. So again, just got my little mixture here. Just spritz just like that. Just so that it's nice and moistens up. There we go. Next, I'll just come in here and rotate it, because again, those different sides are cooking a little differently. And because I rotated it, now I see that I need to spritz a little bit over here. All right, now once the internal on this hits about 160 degrees, it's going to enter what is called the stall. So here's your next tip. The stall happens when the juices have melted enough that they're actually starting to cool the meat down, and it can't heat up because of the fact that it's constantly being cooled and heated at the same time. So it's kind of staying that natural 160, 165 temperature. Usually happens in that range. So at that point, we're gonna wrap it. And we're gonna wrap it because at that point, the bark's gonna be nice and set, and it's gonna accelerate the cooking. So we'll come back out when it's 160, 165-ish, and we'll spritz it one more time, and then we'll wrap it in foil and let it go until it's done. So see you in a few more hours. All right, it's been about another hour. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, see how nice that bark is on there? I'm gonna give this one more spritz. And now it's time to wrap it because my internal temperature is about 165 degrees Fahrenheit. But before I wrap, I gotta take these meat probes out. But we're gonna put them back in, don't worry. Now I'm gonna wrap this entire thing in foil. I got 2 pieces of foil here because it's hot. I'm gonna come back with my gloves and tighten it up. All right. Get that nice and tight around there. Perfect. Now we go back in through the foil on both sides. And now we leave it just like that until the internal temperature hits 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And then it's gonna be done, ready to rest, and ready to pull. So that'll probably take another few hours, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. All right, wait until you see this. Ta-da! Actually, no real ta-das yet. But I'm not going to give in to the urge to unwrap this right now because it needs to rest. There's your next tip. Make sure that you rest your pork butt. How long do you rest it? You can really rest it for a few hours if you want. Minimum, absolute bare minimum 1 hour. Why do we rest it? Well, because this guy's been through a lot, right? Many, many, many hours in the smoke, in the heat, and this is gonna let it calm down. It's gonna let those juices kind of redistribute throughout the meat so that when we pull it, we've got nice, delicious, juicy pork. So only about another hour for me, only about another, I don't know, 5 seconds for you. All right, everybody, 1 hour later, minimum resting time, and it is time finally to show you this pork butt. Here we go. Is the suspense just killing you like it is me? Here we go. Woo! Look at that. And you know what's most impressive about this? Look at all this juice. See, we didn't add that. That's just from that fat rendering down. Wow, all of that juice. And if we didn't use this pan, all of that would just be in the bottom of my smoker. All right, it's time for your final tip when doing pork butt. One of the most awesomely satisfying parts of a cook like this is to grab this shoulder blade bone, which you'll be able to see, it's sticking out. Oh, look at that, it's just falling apart. Just put that over here in this juice, and then you can just pull this bone right out, and it comes out clean. Look at that. Oh, and man, the smell just hit me like you would not even believe. That is the sign of a perfect pork butt. I also want you to take a look here and you'll see that smoke ring in there. That's that pink right there. And now you could shred with meat claws, you could shred with forks, anything like that, or you could just use your hands. Again, this is very, very hot, so I've got on double layered gloves here, but you want to make sure that you don't burn yourself, obviously. So we're just going to go in. I'm not going to do this whole thing right now, but I just want to kind of start pulling that apart. Oh my gosh, look at that. Just look at, listen, look at that right there. Doesn't that look amazing? Oh man, that is going to be perfect. Perfect. But before I take a bite, I'm going to go ahead and pull it, and then I'll be back and we'll finally get to try it. All right, it's pulled, and at long last, there it is. Gorgeous pulled pork. Wow, look at that. Make sure when you're pulling your pulled pork, you make sure to get some of that bark in there. And also, if you're somebody that doesn't like a lot of fat, that's totally fine. All you got to do is just, as you're pulling it, just discard the pieces of fat, but some people like to leave that in. 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Again, it's whatever you like. It's something that I like, is to eat pulled pork. So let's take a bite. All right, this is gonna be incredible. And it's super, super simple. We did just this basic pork butt today. And I can already tell by the way that it smells that it's probably one of the better ones I've ever made. Like seriously. But let's grab a little piece here. Grab a piece with some bark on it. There we go. There we go. Oh, wow. As soon as it hit my mouth. Flavor. That Memphis rub. Wow. Makes a perfect bark. I mean, holy smokes. Wow. For just a basic pork butt, it's one of the, you know what? It's the best pork butt I've ever made. There it is. I said it, the best pork butt I've ever made. Which means if you make it using this tutorial video, it'll be the best pork butt that you've ever made. You know the only thing that'll make this better is some Holy Smokes sweet heat barbecue sauce, right? You can get that right now on my website, holysmokesbbqchannel.com. Also put a link in the description below. It's absolutely perfect on pulled pork. You gotta try it. Well, I hope that this video has been helpful for you, and I hope that you will throw a pork butt on your smoker very, very soon and try this. You will not be sorry. But thank you once again for tuning into the Holy Smokes Barbecue channel, and if you like this video, click that thumbs up to give us a like. That's gonna help other people find our channel, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I've got some other kind of different methods of cooking pork butts. You gotta check out this video and this video. Both of those are gonna have some different pork butt ideas for you. Pork butt is not a super expensive cut of meat, so grab one, throw it on your smoker, check out one of these videos, and I will see you next time.